for a full house today. Fortunately, I think I know almost everybody in this room, so it'll make it really easy. So the introduction talked a little bit about a project that I worked on like at the very, very beginning of my career, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Set the foundation for some of the efforts that the Department of Corrections has done regarding reentry, and then kind of rolls into the employment aspect that we're here to discuss today. So in 2006, when I worked at Alternatives, I was approached as a case manager to be a part of a grant-funded project through MSU Billings. That was a 5-year project called New Pathway Life. And so what it did is it chose high-risk females that were at the Montana Women's Prison, and our goal was to target like 20 total, and then eventually grow that, and see what we could do to take that risk level and try to bring it down a little bit with some intensive case management. So this program has a couple of really, really unique components that I think were pretty amazing. Sustainable, not necessarily, but amazing. So the first thing it had was what was called navigators. And there was 3 of them. They were community members that were paid by the grant to do exactly what that title said. They navigated. They would go into the prison with us, meet with the inmates. At that point in their program, they would talk about their goals, what their release was going to look like. They helped them find housing. They helped them, set up that plan, that whole thing. The other unique component that we had was a full-time job service employee that was with our team. So she would also come in to the prison with us, meet with these people, and just worked one-on-one with them essentially. She helped them write their resumes, helped them do mock interviews, talked about just general behavior in the workplace, things like that. The skills that we could teach while they were still incarcerated. So the real work for everybody began as they transitioned. As they moved into the pre-release center and then eventually into the community, all of these people still worked with them. The navigators would drive them places. I remember the navigators riding the buses with them to try and help them learn how that whole system worked. The employment person went to jobs and met with employers and the employee one-on-one to try and coach and have them work through some of the issues. Excuse me. The other really unique aspect that this job service employee brought to the team was just the need and to kind of teach soft skills, so to speak. Because I think that anybody in this room could probably understand that it's not finding a job that's really the problem, it's keeping the job that a lot of our offenders seem to have problems with. It's really easy for them to go into a workplace, get confronted by a hard situation, whether it's a customer service situation, a conflict with a coworker, a conflict with a supervisor. They immediately go into their coping skills and react. They don't think about it, they don't try to work through it, they react, and sometimes that just leads to them walking out the door. So keeping the job, learning how to work through those things. This woman that worked with us, she did that all day, every day with these guys, trying to get them to the point where they could deal with these kinds of small crises that they were having. What that did for me, because I had then, at that point, I had been the case manager on the project, and then I transitioned into the probation officer, because I got hired by the department. So we actually had, at one point, reentry probation officers. That was our name. There was one in every region. I don't think that it took off, really, probably as much as it did in Billings anywhere else, but purely because we were doing this project, so it was time-intensive in Billings. So we had a reentry probation officer, and that was me for like 5 years. But what this did is that took some of that stuff off of my plate. It was amazing to be able to just call up a navigator, call up the job service employee and say, hey, Kristen had a crisis today at work. Could you please call her, walk her through it, talk to the employer, see if this is salvageable, et cetera, and she did it. It was amazing. It was a fantastic program. The navigator, hey, Kristen and her is having trouble with her CPS worker. Kristen's having trouble with her partner. What can we do? Who do we need to refer her to? Could you have a conversation? Because sometimes, just purely because of my title as a probation officer, they weren't going to tell me everything. But they tell this community member some things, and then we could help. I really believe that the navigator portion and the job service employee part of this grant was the most valuable part. Unfortunately, we can't pay them to do that, right? With the 5 years, the grant ended, the positions went away. But what it did was really set a good base and understanding about how important these roles could be, right? So I made good connections at job service. We saw the value in having community members and that peer support. I think that helped open my mind to that kind of thing. And then what really kind of the department stuck with after that project was that building that relationship before release. We still do that. We don't do it to the extent, but we changed like our conditional release investigation policies so that we have to go meet with offenders before they come out. So we're no longer just meeting them face to face the day they sign rules. So that changed from this, and I thought that was a really promising change. So moving into kind of what we're doing now, I talked to our drug court liaison that's with the Camel Court and the Steer Court and with Judge Nisley and Billings before I came and talked today, and asked her how they manage the expectations with employment and drug court, because the drug court is so time intensive between the treatment and you have to appear in the court weekly or bi-weekly, whatever phase you might be in. And she talked a lot about how really they kind of do something similar within the treatment court, which is they have that targeted case management, they have the job service specialist, or with the veterans court that she's on, they have somebody at the VA that works with them, and then the job service actually has a veterans program. So they have the same thing that we were doing. So they have some of those tools already in place. She said that, their unemployment rate in the drug court is pretty low, and I would agree with that. I think generally speaking, unemployment with our offenders is low everywhere. I think, again, the issue isn't finding the job, the issue is keeping the job sometimes. So then I was thinking about what exactly we do in our billings office that's specific to trying to work through these employment barriers right now. We are very fortunate that some of those relationships with job service were built. So we also have a former probation officer who works at job service now. So these are great connections. He emails us, the job listings every week. So every week it goes to our entire office, every job listing that is listed at job service for the city of Billings, that goes out. They come to our all staff meetings periodically, just as reminders of what kind of services they offer. They're coming in October, I believe. We have so many staff members that are new, that have been hired in the last year, and also from out of state. So they don't even know what job service can provide. So putting that in front of the staff, making sure that they understand that these services are out there and that they can be accessed is important. And then we also have a new project starting in Billings through a Montana Healthcare Foundation grant that I think is going to be really exciting and will be very similar to what we've already done. It'll be a targeted case management project targeting high-risk males and females this time coming out of incarceration. We will have an alternatives employee in our office and a probation officer dedicated to this that will have a reduced caseload capped around like 30 to 35 offenders to provide the intensive services to try and give these guys the skills to overcome some of these barriers. So that'll kick off this fall, and I think I'm really excited about that one because I think that that's where like the money is, right? The sweet spot and how we can really affect some change, especially in a population that needs it the most. So my job today was to set the stage about the reentry efforts the department has done. And then I'm going to transition it over to Taylor, who's going to talk about what job service has enjoyed.
All right, Tanner Woodward again. Thanks for making it down. I'm going to go over our current reentry efforts that we have set up with Department of Corrections, and then I'm going to go over a handful of questions to kind of help out drug court on some of the stuff that they were asking prior to this meeting. So right now, we've always had a person help out with reentry individuals, incarcerated individuals, but we wanted to expand on that. We expanded to 2 people to trial it. There was an individual out of Billings, and then Terry Knudsen, she was here in Bozeman, that kind of started this whole reentry efforts. Terry is no longer with the Job Service Bureau, and then we have one other in Billings. So it started as a pilot, and then we kind of morphed into a little bit more, and we're still changing things up as we go with DOC and what works best with them and for us. So according to the Montana Department of Correction, recidivism is described when individuals re-entering society obtain, or recidivism is decreased when individuals re-entering society obtain employment. The DOC, case managers, and probation and parole officers help offenders navigate a variety of re-entry challenges before and after release. Job Service Montana workforce consultants are skilled in assisting individuals to overcome employment barriers, including criminal convictions. We help individuals identify and obtain appropriate resources, training, and connections to become successfully employed. Montana businesses are experiencing workforce shortages throughout the state, just about in every industry. So the justice-involved individuals are a unutilized pool of workers, and that's what we're trying to focus on to get them back into the workforce. And a lot of the employers out there are excited and willing to accept and work with them. DOC and JSOB are involved in efforts to serve justice-involved individuals in many of our communities. While these efforts are successful in varying degrees, they are not typically formal or scalable. Currently, we are working with DOC in 2 locations, the Montana State Prison in Deer Lodge and the Billings Women Prison. We have a referral process in place. The gist of it is 60 to 90 days if somebody gets released, drop dead date, or they need parole, that we want to start working with them, start setting up meetings, start getting an intake process form in place. Always tweak our intake process form with DOC and Job Service to make it better. Currently, right now, we have a process set up to where it goes to the inmates that we know that they're going to be released. There's a lot of information that we get from them. Their case manager could work with them to fill it out, or that inmate could fill it out. And then once we have it, we'll contact them either phone, Zoom, to set up a meeting to get more personal information, if it's Social Security, date of birth. So that way we can get them registered into our system. Once they're in our system, it's throughout Montana, we can start looking for jobs, connections, working with employers that best suit their needs. And then once they are on release, we can get them to that local office. A lot of times DOC we don't know where they're going to be going, but DOC may not know exactly where they're going to be released to. So if they go to Helena, we can work with that Helena Job Service and let them know their intake process form, what they currently have, and businesses that they're currently interested in. And those folks at the Job Service could work with those employers in that community to help set up interviews to get them ready when that intake comes to their office. So some of the efforts prior to release: ensure the offenders have the necessary documentation to be employed. Just understand their barriers, their skills, and their training needs. Coach the offenders on any strategies to be successful when they're still there. One tool that we have is, this is just a little brochure. It's Your Future is Waiting. It's pretty cool. It has the offender to go through. It helps them with questions that an employer may have during an interview. So it will walk them through steps to answer the questions, and then that way they can bring it with them, or they just know about it during the interview to be able to address it. It also has how to write a cover letter. They'll go through a handful of questions of what to put in the cover letter, how to address a felony. It'll also talk about your legal rights, and then some of the programs that might benefit an employer. So we give this, we work with them prior to release and even after release. So upon release, again, we'll refer them to a job service office. They'll go in there and assist them with any of the trainings that they may need within their community. We like to collaborate with the probation and parole officers and any other reentry partners within that area to see if we can better assist or help these individuals coming out of prison. We'll track services and any outcomes, and then expand access to offenders and additional facilities. Right now, again, we're only working with Deer Lodge State Prison and then Billings Prison. We'd like to reach out to a lot more and start working with other prison, state, and private help as well. We're a little limited with some of our job service staff right now. Just in the last year and a half, we've probably had over 40 individuals that are no longer working at the job service, so we're hopefully revamping some of those numbers. And that limits us on the reentry team, since there's a lot of duties within the offices. We've had 3 people on the reentry team leave, and so we're trying to ramp those up, but it's more of a priority of what that office can and can't do at this time. So we're getting there. I think we hit rock bottom, but bounce back up. Some of the questions that were sent prior, I'll read them out and then address them. What services are available and how best to help our participants take advantage of them? Job service, we have the job search assistance, resume and cover letter review and writing assistance. This helps out that, but a lot of times some of these individuals have a hard time writing or getting it down on paper, or what a cover letter should look like, what a resume, what is needed in there. We'll help with that. We'll assist them with that. We'll work with them on that. Practice interviews. It's not every day that they're just sitting there, going through an interview process in their head, or sitting down with their friend going over interview questions or answers, so to say. So we'll practice with them on that. Career coaching and guidance. We have a research room for career search related topics. We have MCIS it's a program that goes through a lot of different careers that are available, pay-wise, something that would fit their bill. Along these services, our offices also have funding that you might be eligible for, which can assist with paying for future education opportunities and or training. We pay a lot of trainings that help them get back to work. We have services, we pay for services if they need boots, if they have gas, if they need gas for their vehicle, if they need tires for the vehicle. We have programs that can assist them on that, so it's beneficial for them to come into a job service office to see what we have. It doesn't fit everybody. We work with them, our workforce consultants work with every individual. It may be different from one person to another. It's just not the same as like, oh, you get $10 here, you get $5 here. It doesn't work that way. We assess them in the best needs possible. Another question that came in is, how can we best prepare them for those services? One of the best things you can do is get them registered with us, create a montanaworks.gov account. Just go to montanaworks.gov, click register, and then go through the steps to create an account. For funding wise, if they're going to be needing funding or if they're seeking funding, ideally we'd like to have a program or a training that they would like, where the program is training wise, or where the training program is going to be taking place at, the length of the training, any known start or end dates of it, and then how much it costs. This helps us have it all in place in our system to justify, yep, this is what we can and can't do. If it's too washy, we're not going to be able to sign off on it, so to say. And then any required materials that they need for that program for completion. So dog grooming, if they're going to need their own tools to complete, we're going to need to know about that so we can either purchase or find those tools for that dog grooming training for them. versus them getting all the way done and saying, oh, I needed these, and then trying to get the tools afterwards when they're already signed off on everything. You're gonna have to have access to driver's license, social security number, tax returns, up to 6 months, an employment history, spouse's income, name, birth date of any relationship with members in the house. It seems like a lot, but again, it's some of these programs that we have that we give money out are from our federal friends, so we'll blame them for all the extra items that we need for documentation. We need to know what you consider successful. Any client interaction that yields beneficial information for a client is considered successful in our book. If a service can be provided that continues to foster the feeling of success, great, awesome. Everybody's going to be different. Everybody's going to have a different need. Some people want to just know more about a career or have questions about tips on interviewing, or a lot of them come in even for significant others or kids. So anything that we can give them to help them, to knowledge them, is a success for us. We don't want to blanket it and say, yep, if you got certified at a training event that's successful, you're going to go off and do it. Sometimes by the time that they start working in that career that they decided that we got them the training, it may not even fit their bill and they may jump ship. It's kind of like taking college generals. It's, yeah, I had an idea, I wanted to do this, and halfway through the year you jump ship and try to do something else. We see that a lot with individuals. What are your criteria for a successful outcome? Having a beneficial interaction with a client where they leave with more information, knowledge, or skills than they originally arrived with. If that's for them, if that's for a spouse, as long as we're providing information and stuff for them, that's a success for us. This last one is a great question. How can we establish a single point of contact in the local office, someone who can become familiar with how treatment courts operate and attend staffing meetings, docket, and graduations? I know of one individual, Mark Larson, out of the Helen office. He has done all those staff meetings, graduations of individuals through the drug treatment courts. At this time he can't do them just because that office used to hold over 10 employees, and now we're down to, I believe, 4 or 5 people in that office. So his functions are running every other which direction. Right now we could work with the re-entry team that we have. We're down 3 people, but there's still 4 of us on there. Email is, you can email me, you can email this email distribution list, which is dli.wsd.reentry@mt.gov, and then we can work with you to get you in contact with somebody in the community. But just to have one standalone specific person out in each job service office, it's pretty hard for us right now. Give us some time once we get staffed back up, and we'll be able to have better contacts. That's it for me. Turn it over. I'll take questions later.
I'm Jean Michael. I'm from the Bozeman Probation Office. I just became a supervisor, but for many years I've worked with clients. Right now it's kind of different because I don't go see them on a daily basis. I've seen people from growing up to like teenager all the way up to an adult where they've had success stories and some of them have failed. But I worked in treatment court for 5 years, and it was a blessing to work in treatment court. You really get to work close hand in hand with them. You work with other programs to see them succeed. Some of the things, like for us, when we were in treatment court, we had friends in treatment court, and they were fantastic. We had people that were walking back and forth to their employment. We bought them shoes. People needing transportation, we got them bicycles, or we refer them to the bike kitchen. We also actually had a person in as an incentive to pay off her fine. She took a money management class through Love Inc., and they actually gave her her car so she could get around. So I've seen things over the years. Some of the biggest barriers around Bozeman is people can find employment around here, but the issue is the housing. It's so expensive. And things we've helped with that is that we've had some vouchers to help people with like living expenses, but we also have a program, Greater Impact. The female Linda Walker actually graduated treatment court. She helps run that program now. They have a program where they will actually help you fix your car and everything, donate a car so you can get around. They actually have people to come out to fix your houses, like hardwiring, plumbing, so people aren't having to worry about working and then trying to take stuff care at home. They also have coaching financial classes, so we have a lot of like great local resources for people. I'm really bummed. I miss Terry Knudsen. She was an awesome connection over the years. I referred a lot of people to her. She would just take her time with them, help them with their resumes. She went into the jail and she worked with Julia Henry, who does the Fresh Start program at the jail. And they worked hand in hand where they actually had people come in and they interview for jobs to get jobs when they're coming out. She would do like the mock interviews. Like, she was wonderful to have around here, which it's kind of hard not to have her anymore. That's like every one of us would be like, oh, just talk to Terry Knudsen, like we referred everyone to her. Other things we did with over the years, we used to have vouchers for Salvation Army to get people clothing, so they dress for success, because people sometimes they don't have the clothing, the money. It's been awesome. We actually have funding that we actually can give toiletries, clothing, backpacks, food vouchers. I had someone come the other day, they were needing that stuff and they were looking for a job, and they were just wonderful. They were like so happy that they could actually take a shower to feel clean, to be presentable, to go to jobs. Even over the years coming in as a PO, you just don't talk to them like, have you done this and this? You sit there and you're passionate, and you, hey, can I help you with your resume and everything, looking over, make sure the spell check and everything, or hey, my employer really needs something to show you that I'm in compliance and everything. So we've written letters to employers saying, hey, this person's in compliance, or any questions, please feel free to call us. We like to network with them, so they feel free that they can reach us and we can reach out to them, because sometimes what happens is they hear a different story. Well, I have to go see my PO when they're not actually going to see their PO, they just don't show up to work. So it's been nice to do things like that. One local thing here is we've referred people to the bike kitchen for to build bikes, to get bikes around for transportation. Bozeman is it's very easy to find a job, it's just hard for housing around here, and that's the biggest issue with us. We use a lot of services. We reach out to everyone, we network with other POs in different areas, like what programs do you use, this and that. But I think one of our biggest programs we've had is the job service and Fresh Start, which I said, they're awesome in the jail. They'll start working with them on applications there, kind of getting things going, to get them out to get ready for employment. One of their other resources we use is our career leases. We have the enhanced supervision programs, where transitional programs where we can refer people for job performance to help them. Some people kind of slack on their knowing what they need to do for job stuff, and so it's kind of nice that we have a case manager. We'll meet with them weekly saying, how's your job searching going, which takes a little bit of little pressure off the PO, so they can focus on other things with their cases to help them find employment. Anything else I'm missing? Sorry for the rambling. I don't think of anything else. Any questions? I'll hand it over.
My name is Stephanie Rolling. I'm nowhere near as prepared as these guys, so bear with me. Sprung this on me 2 days ago. So I run a residential substance abuse treatment program, the only one that we have in the state of Montana, out of the Butte Silverbow Detention Center. So that we have a diversion program as well run through our mental health unit, which has really helped offenders coming out of incarceration, especially if they're just going on to like misdemeanor probation. We try to coordinate a plan with the diversions, like we were able to work with the courts to be able to, say we get them a reduced sentence or a deferred sentence, which is like the greatest blessing you can get from court, so that maybe they can have that charge expunged from their record, and not hold them back from potential job opportunities and housing, stuff like that. We too are struggling with housing, which is terrible for like a number of reasons, but trying to get them connected with the community. And I think as a counselor, like the biggest thing that I can bring to my clients is making them feel valued, making them feel seen and heard, being able to develop a relationship with them to like empower them and make them feel that they can do better than maybe they have done. So when my clients are coming into like family treatment courts out of jails, we would do like a roadmap. It's kind of like a vision board thing. So like what's their goals? Like 6 months, 9, 12, and then by the time that they graduate in the next couple of years. And so really trying to set simple, attainable, measurable goals with them. A lot of my clients don't have a high school diploma, so getting them connected to get a high set. Through treatment court, we'll provide them with tutors. They can get TANF benefits while they're going to school. I have a lot of clients that end up pursuing like beauty school or other higher levels of education. And so like when I'm getting guys out of the detention center, like I have a whole checklist that we developed with the case management to list career futures, job service, anywhere that in the community, the temp agencies and stuff, they can go for potential jobs. And a lot of those temp agencies, they'll start a spot job at a construction company and it'll end up being a full-time position as long as they're sober and consistent and showing up. So we try to expose them as much as possible to just a real wide variety of things, because I feel like when they're active in their addiction, they lose sight of the things that they do and they don't like. And like I think somebody was saying, like in college, like I changed majors I think 5 times. So like trying to get them more options, know what's available to them. That's all been really great. The peer support, we offer peer support in Butte. We've kind of struggled with peer support because of sobriety mainly, but also just trying to keep the position at a professional and appropriate level. But peer support is a great resource, and I think connecting peer support with law enforcement can be a really big benefit. I was at a training a couple of years ago, and they had, it was on the East Coast, but they had a peer support staff that directly worked with their police department to try to de-escalate situations and talk about treatment with people that were struggling on the streets. And I thought that that was a really cool aspect to use peer support. Somebody else touched on it. Letters from treatment courts or letters from probation, obviously, like to say so-and-so is doing well, they've been on supervision, or they're checking in, they're providing negative UAs, they seem to be doing well. That stuff helps our clients be able to get and keep jobs. Some of the questions that were asked, Tanner did a great job going through those, but it asks something about success and like what would my perception of success be for a client. And like I used to have a pretty black and white perspective in addictions. Like I was trained in a really abstinent-based treatment model. Like if they weren't using, that was good. If they did relapse, that was bad. And that's not the way that the treatment's going to be beneficial to somebody. So I can't say that if a client relapses and comes to my office and says like, I need help, I need to figure this out, that's success. Being able to bounce back and to get back on their feet or prevent further use from there, like that's success. I'm a big proponent in like holistic recovery. If their basic needs aren't met, they're not going to do well. they need to take care of themselves and, many different aspects, physical, social, emotional, spiritual needs all need to equally balance, and that will create more success. I also believe in harm reduction. I wasn't trained in that, but definitely with the fentanyl and the substance use that I'm seeing in Butte, we're getting people started on medication-assisted treatment. We have a needle exchange. Just trying to connect these people the best that we can into the community to work with them. Thanks.
All right, so with that, we do have some time for questions. Hopefully there are some questions. If not, I have a question for Tanner that I was wondering about as he was talking. So does anybody have any questions for anybody up here?
You mentioned, actually it was your program that you mentioned you guys did a 5-year thing in Billings. I'm curious, what was the expected outcome of that? Because you mentioned obviously it's not sustainable because it's grant funds, right? And you hired staff out of that. Was it to try and find additional funding to keep those people, or was it more intended to create this awareness of what you could develop and figure out other ways to supplement that when the grant funds went away?
I think ultimately when it started at the beginning of the 5-year period, the goal was that it would be sustained.
Oh yeah.
It never worked that way. As we all know, finding funding for additional full-time employees is hard. It's not easy, especially these kinds of, who's going to pay for it, who are they going to work for, what agency are they going to work for. I mean, at one point this group we had a community reentry group that was stemmed from this project, and it had probably 100 different representatives from the city of Billings, like business owners, treatment providers, landlords, everything you can possibly imagine was at the table. But in the end, nobody wants to put up money to sustain some of the funding. So I think the goal was to have it sustained. It just never worked. I wish it would have.
So, a couple of comments and then a sort of question. Good for you in Butte, in Galvin County. The more upstream you can get these guys, the better. So get them out of jail, so that way they don't become ours is way, way better than us trying to rehabilitate that after the fact. Tanner, thanks for the partnership. That's huge for us, but I will say the one thing, I think you said it, Katie, and I'm excited about this new thing in Billings, even though it's not new. But we keep on talking about jobs, and Scott and I have had this conversation. We need to stop talking about jobs and start talking about careers, because anybody can get a job, but they're not going to make enough to live. If they're not going to live, then they're going to go back to the way that they were. So one of the things that we're looking at and trying to partner with PLI is preparing them with trades and careers where when they get out, they're not going to just be a part-time laborer. They're actually going to be a plumber, electrician, or a framer, or something like that, and making good money, so that way they can afford a decent house. And so just a comment that we need to sort of refocus on what we're trying to do and maybe aim a little bit higher. So.
I totally agree, and I think it's interesting actually that you say this, because 10 years ago when I started with the Department of Corrections, the programs that were in the prison there was some very career-centered programs. And I mostly worked at the women's prison because I'm from Billings and that's where I'm from. But they were very career-centered. They were welding and they were driving construction equipment, and there was a programming class and these kinds of things. And then as progress ebbs and flows, some of those programs went away, and some of them haven't come back, some of them have. But it has been interesting to watch over the last 10 years that kind of happen. So I think that hopefully that is the direction that we're going now inside the facilities.
I have one more. I'm curious from y'all's perspective. You mentioned one of the things that all of you guys mentioned is that this is a team. This is a group sport, right? This is a team sport, and nobody does this on their own. Everybody has a role in that, and in every community, there are a whole bunch of different groups, and particularly because workforce is such a thing right now, there's a whole bunch of interest in that in all these different communities. different groups getting together to talk about that. But there does seem to be some level of disconnect in a lot of those communities between those different groups, right? You might get somebody who's part of 3 different groups sort of talking about the same types of things, right? So Billings is interesting. Billings works and has done some work with that. Lewistown has had some success with the Port Authority. Helena has tried to do that with Helena Winds, trying to bring some of these things together that involve places where these folks come from, like drug courts, right? These feeder entities, but also involve industry to talk about the workforce needs and try and get more career pathway types of opportunities. Are you guys part of those types of, are you getting invited to those tables, or do you have a sense of what those opportunities are in your communities?
I have not.
Not so much? Okay.
It may be happening, but not that I'm aware of it. That's something
I appreciate your candor. That's something we can work on, so that's why I asked. Thank you.
The Billings groups, so the 5 years that grant sustained, it was thriving. And it went on for probably another 5 years after that and kind of fell apart as leadership changed and different entities didn't have the time. I think personally it'd be really easy to pull it all back together. Just finding somebody who's going to take the time to be the community leader, so to speak. And I don't always think that's like the Department of Corrections is the right entity for that. I think that it would be better done by somebody else and we're at the table. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious. The referral service through job service. So I'm curious about 2 different things. First off, with the stuff inside the facilities from the men's prison and the women's prison, what does that referral process look like? Is that coming from case managers or MCE? Who does that come from?
It comes from the case managers from the state prison, and then at the women's prison, they're not considered case managers. They have this title. But they'll send over the employment action plan, and sometimes it works, sometimes they'll send it over filled out with their information on it. Sometimes it's just, hey, we got this guy leaving, here's our deal, can you help out? And then we'll be in contact with them. We'll go through it, fill it out, and enter it into the system. Ideally, to have it all set up, work with them individually, go through it with them on a Zoom call, work with them, on their training needs or what they want to go to work as. We can start working with employers to help them out that way. We all get busy, we're all doing 100 other things at the moment, so it kind of gets to a rush to
So then I guess the second part of that would be, so community members, like some of the ones we have in this room, if they needed to refer somebody to a local job service, obviously you talked about registering, but how do we get them into those resume writing classes and mock interviews, that kind of thing?
Any local office is happy to take on anybody and then go through their processes of what trainings they have available, when they're available. If it is calling their main line, working with the manager there, anybody can go in the front door and ask the same thing, and then they'll get directed to the right individual. A lot of times it will be the supervisor, and they call another local office manager and saying, hey, we have this, could we partner up and help this individual? But yes, just any local office is contacts in place that
Just walk in the door.
you just walk in the door.
Any other questions?
Just real quick, Tanner, you said that you guys aren't tied in with Core Civic up in Shelby or Dawson County or regional?
When we had Terry,
Yeah, Terry.
She sounds like a hero.
She was. She did this for 10, 15 years, and so she had all the connections. We had 3 others that she was working with, and there were connections there. Since she left, we tried to keep them on, but we focused on the 2 so we want to get back into those areas. But yes, currently just building some of those prison.
We'll take care of that.
All right. we have planned. Thank you guys for coming. Hopefully you learned something. I know I did actually, so it's valuable to do.